Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the reading strategy of predicting. And predicting, I want you to be able to be doing it before, during, and after reading a text. So, what is predicting? Well, when I look it up in the dictionary, predict, predicting, predicted is a verb, and it means to declare or indicate and show in advance, meaning you're doing it before it were to happen. So let's talk about trying to predict or try predicting before you begin reading. When you are predicting before you read, it requires you to make connections and tap into your prior knowledge. So look at these possible ways to predict. You can use the title of an article or a book to predict what it might be about. You could also use chapter headings. If they just number them, that doesn't help you, but if there's actual chapter headings, then that can give you an insight. And then looking at the front and back covers of a book, whether it's a picture book or a chapter book, can give you some idea, especially if you read the summary or synopsis. Then I want you to think about, what do you know about the genre? If it were poetry, you would have different thoughts and expectations than if it was a who was book. Or if it's an author, a certain author you enjoy, maybe I think of like the Diary of the Wimpy Kids, those kind of things. You have certain expectations of the characters and what the author is going to put into the series. Next, you may also tap into, what do you already know about the topic? If you were to check out a book on a soccer player or a basketball player, you probably already know what teams they were on, maybe some stats and data about their playing abilities, and you might know a little bit about them, but you're going to learn more things, hopefully, as you begin reading. And lastly, take a look at text features. You may not have as many text features in a chapter book, but if it's a picture book or a nonfiction or an article, you're going to have text features like diagrams, photographs, illustrations, and maps. And we do that when we're predicting or making connections or tapping into our background knowledge. So let's try this. Here is the cover of a 2021 Bluebonnet nominee. What can you predict about it? What genre do you think it is? Is it a picture book or a chapter book? What's the topic of this book? What do you know about the topic? And the subtitle says Martin Luther King Jr. and the Speech That Inspired a Nation. So the subtitle mentions the speech that inspired a nation. Do you know anything about that speech? So as I gave it a try, here's what I thought of. Okay, I bet this book is going to be literary nonfiction. It appears to be a picture book. My topic is Martin Luther King Jr. What do I know about him as a topic? Well, I know he was a pastor who spoke out about civil rights for African Americans. I also know that unfortunately he was shot. The subtitle mentions the speech that inspired a nation, and I know that MLK Jr. gave a powerful I Have a Dream speech. Maybe you've heard of that speech title. We can also predict during our reading. So to predict while you are reading, again, still making connections, still tapping into prior knowledge, we're going to continue to look at diagrams, photographs, illustrations, maps, fact boxes, all sorts of timelines, all of our text features. And we're going to see if any of our questions are answered while we're reading. And then we can think about, what do we already know about the vocabulary? An example of the Martin Luther King book, I would know topics that he had a march in Montgomery, Alabama. That could be some vocabulary. I know what the civil rights movement is. I know that vocabulary. What do you know about the text structure? So if it's nonfiction, if it's an article, there's going to be a specific text structure. What has happened so far in the text? And then what do you know about the character or characters? So let's try predicting with the book Refugee that we've been reading in class. We know that Joseph is stuck on a boat at Cuba, but we also knowing that two other boats that were able to unload. We can predict that the MS St. Louis should be next to unload its passengers. When we think about Isabel's mom, her being pregnant, and now at the end of where we were leaving off, she was running a fever. Probably not a good thing. We can predict that something might happen to the mom and baby if mom is sick. As we go through the book and finish chapters, are you predicting what might happen next? If you've read other Alan Gratz books, have you used your knowledge of his writing style to predict what might happen to Joseph, Isabel, and Muhammad? And then finally, we can predict after our reading. It's not too hard to do. When you're predicting after you read, you stop and just take a minute to predict. What will the characters do next? If there's another book in the series, how do you think the next book will pick up and continue the storyline? Would there ever have been another interesting ending to consider? And what connection can you make to other books on the topic? Maybe other books you've read about refugees, Martin Luther King Jr., or any kind of books that you're currently reading right now. So let's try this as an example. Are you a fan of those, or a fan who's read a lot of these books in the series of Diary of a Wimpy Kid? This is the most recent one. Where will the story go next? What connections can you make between Greg and the other characters in the stories? What if they hadn't inherited the house, but maybe instead got a castle in England instead? Can you think of any other funny situations that might have happened that way? So ultimately, thoughtful readers, they're going to predict, make connections, visualize, and tap into prior knowledge when they read. Are you doing these things? Here's a little example of a bookmark I'm going to give to you this week. All the things we've covered in this slideshow. These are all different ways to predict. All right, look forward to hearing about your predictions.